So welcome to the leadership team, and welcome to a company who is running on the entrepreneurial operating system. You've made a great choice. They obviously take planning and execution seriously. The purpose of this video is to give you an overview of all things EOS and bring you up to speed, ready to participate in the level 10 meetings and quarterly sessions with me. So I'm Dan Williams. I'm your EOS implementer on this journey. The agenda for the video is pretty basic. I'm going to give you a bit of a background about us. I'll take you through the tools and the process. The purpose of recording this is to enable you to go at your own pace, skip ahead, go back and watch at any time. Hopefully you get some value. So about us, who are we? So me, I'm Dan Williams. I'm an EOS implementer. I work out of my session room, which is behind me here in Port Melbourne. I'm currently working with around 20 different companies all across Australia and New Zealand. I'm a former director and CEO of an IT services company. I was in that capacity for many years and involved in the company for upwards of 16 years. A bit of a serial entrepreneur as a kid, but maybe less so later in life. I started out selling PCs at the age of 12 or 13. I've always had an interest in business. I believe that if you stop chasing the money and focus on your passion, that the money will chase you. I've been an EOS implementer since 2017, currently working within the community in Australia. All up, there's approximately at this point in time, in 2020, there are around 350 implementers. So EOS Worldwide was founded by Gino Wickman and Don Tinney. So Gino wrote a book called Traction, which you will receive a copy of that soon. The company started on the back of Gino's experience in business, building a business, trying things, having successes and failures, working in a family business where he eventually transitioned that business to new owners and to a new leadership team. All the while he was a part of an EO chapter out of Detroit. And he found that he had a knack for all things business and business process. And he created the entrepreneurial operating system with the help of Don Tinney. The community worldwide, the APAC community extends from Australia to New Zealand to the UAE, Japan, India, the Philippines, and growing, which is amazing. So you're still getting on board early days, so welcome. The EOS tools are made up of 6 key components, and 6 key components are centered around your business being in the middle. The components are people, vision, data, issues, process, and traction. Gino coined the phrase, vision without traction is hallucination. I'm definitely a strong believer of that. I'm going to take you through these components. So the 6 key components, we do what we call an organizational checkup. And so your company will have done that regularly. And what we're doing is to make you what we call 80 strong, 80% out of 100. That's our goal as we implement EOS. It's about progress, not perfection. So 80% is our goal. Most businesses are sitting around 20%, which isn't a failure at all. It's an opportunity to improve. The first component is vision. So vision is where it all starts. We answer the 8 questions. The 8 questions are, what are our core values? What is our core focus? What is our 10-year target? What is our marketing strategy? What is our 3-year picture? Our 1-year plan, our 90-day rocks, and what goes on our issues list for the quarter. They'll make more sense as you work through this, but they're effectively the foundations for a document which we call the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. In answering those 8 questions, we produce a 1-page business plan that we are guiding the whole organization towards. That VTO looks a little like this, and your company will have their version of it and be populated with that data. We craft the core values that exist within the organization. We identify them. They become the guiding principles for recruitment, for rewarding people, and also identifying when people don't align with our core values. Our core focus describes our purpose, cause, or passion, our niche, what we do, why we do it, and where we do it. Our 10-year target is where we want to be in 10 years. Our marketing strategy distills all the key elements of a marketing strategy. So who is our target market? What are the 3 unique things that we're telling them about us? And what's our proven process for doing business? And some businesses opt to have a guarantee, kind of like the 30 minutes or your pizza is free. A 3-year picture is where we start to get into more detail in what that's going to look like on our way to our 10-year target. We lock in a date, a revenue target, profit target, some high-level numbers in the form of measurables, and 10 to 15 dot points that will describe us in 3 years. Our 1-year plan is when rubber hits the road. So the 3-year picture is describing a bit of aspiration, inspiration. The 1-year plan is what we are doing. We put a date, a revenue target, profit target, and measurables that we're going to watch throughout the year and try and impact some high-level numbers. We set 5 to 7, sometimes 3 to 7 goals for the year. They're our high-level, big-ticket items. And then 90 days at a time, we set what we call rocks, which is based on the rocks, pebbles, sand analogy. The rocks are the most important high-priority items. We put them in the beaker first. The pebbles are all the operational things that just need to happen. They fall in around the rocks. And the sand is all the things that we didn't plan for. That fills the space once we've focused on the high priority and the operational items. We set a future date every 90 days, revenue target on track for our 1 year, profit target on track for our 1 year, and a version of those 1-year measurables, 90 days at a time, 90-day increments. We choose the 3 to 7 highest priority items to focus on 90 days at a time, and then we assign accountability. Our little, probably most underrated part of the VTO is our issues list. This is where we park the things that we're not doing that are important. We put them over to the side and we'll come back to those either throughout the quarter, or ideally, if they're big ticket items that can wait, we'll come back to them at our next quarterly in 90 days. The core values are discovered. We don't create them, they already exist. We define them as a team and we live and breathe those through the organization. Our core focus, like I said, is our purpose, cause, passion, and our niche. 10-year target. What do we want from our business in 10 years? Some people try and picture 30 years out, which is difficult in some businesses, especially a fast-changing industry, but we choose 10 years normally. Some people also opt for 5. It's our number 1 goal that we're all working towards. It's a closer look at our marketing strategy and our 3-year picture. And our traction page, in summary again. So this document exists in your business. It's reviewed every 90 days. All the moving parts on it, we question them, we challenge them every 90 days. And the goal is to achieve what we call shared by all. We use simple language, a clear 1-page format, a consistent format, and we come back to when we present an update every 90 days to our team and give them a fighting chance of being able to share in that vision. The next component is people. So the people component is about having the right people first in your business. So the right people are the people who share our core values. So the example core values here are the values of the EOS worldwide community, and some names down the left to give you an example. Every 90 days, we assess our alignment with our core values, plus being you share that value or demonstrate that value most of the time. Plus minus is you demonstrate that value some of the time. And minus is most of the time you do not share that value. When we created the core values for your organization, we established what we call the bar, and that's the minimum accepted standard. So that allows us to identify if people have drifted from our core values. And what that gives us is an opportunity to have a conversation to say, hey, Ellen, at the moment we're seeing that you're out of alignment with our core values. Is everything okay? And you're able to have a more meaningful conversation about how we bring them back to alignment with our values. Same token, we can reward people like Joanne, who are an outstanding example of our core values. The second part is having the people in the right seats. The right people share our values, and the right seats are people who want, and have capacity to do their role. So as Gino says, structure first, people second. Once we know the structure of the organization, we create what we call an accountability chart. And this accountability chart maps out all of the accountabilities as they exist in your business. We try and make this a forward-looking document, 6 to 12 months into the future, so that we're always keeping pace with the needs of the organization. Once we know what those seats are, we give the function a name. And then we identify the roles or accountabilities for that. And then last of all, we assign that to a person. That way, we're always making sure that we're crafting an accountability chart that suits the requirements of the company and not building them around people. If we build them around people and that person leaves the business, then we're left with a function that was crafted for that person. An example, marketing sales seat. LMA stands for lead, manage, and accountability. So that implies that that person is accountable for others, leading and managing those. Some high-level accountabilities: marketing, hitting the sales number, selling, and account management. Just so that is clear, and I know how I'm contributing to the organization. And then we ask ourselves every 90 days, does that person get it? Do they understand their role? Do they want it? Do they have the desire to perform that role? And do they have the capacity to do it? So that's an acquired capacity. Do they have the skills, the mental capacity? Sometimes it's about time capacity as well. Are we realistically giving that person enough time to fulfill that role? And so we add that to the people analyzer, and we're just asking ourselves, is it a yes or a no? And that allows us to determine whether that person is in the wrong seat. If there's a no, then we're suggesting that they're in the wrong seat. We're aiming for people to all be in the right seat. We're again able to have a meaningful conversation to say, is it a capacity issue? Do you not get it because we haven't been clear enough about the expectations? Or if you don't want it, have you fallen out of love with that role? Is it time to consider a different position within the organization? So once we know what those right seats are, we can populate that then across the whole company, and it looks like a little bit like this, and this will exist in your organization. What we find is there are two kinds of people issues. So having the right person in the wrong seat, so a person who shares your values but doesn't want or have capacity for their role, or a wrong person right seat. So they don't align with your core values, but they absolutely want and have capacity to fulfill their role. We have options and we've got ways to address that, and it's great to be able to talk to those values and talk to that accountability chart. The next is the data component. The data component is firstly made up of the scorecard. And so your company scorecard will give you the high level, the low level version of the high level numbers. So what are the numbers that we're looking at weekly? What is our goal? Who's accountable for it? And what is the threshold? What's the target we're hitting? If we hit it, it's red. If we don't hit it, it's red. And then we talk about it in our level 10 meeting, which I'll come to later. If it's on track, we know that we set that number at where we need it to be, and we just keep going, and we're able to have a meaningful conversation then about what do we do when a number is missed. And the measurables that we set 90 days at a time will be a representation of the performance indicators of each of the functions on the accountability chart. First at the high level, which we call the leadership level, where in this case it's marketing, sales, operations, and finance. And then we distill those down into what are the activities in each of these departments that we need to be measuring, what are the critical, most meaningful numbers. And once we know what they are, we can have a conversation about them each week if they're off track. And our measurables are our 90-day. They're our big numbers that we're trying to change on our way to our 1-year plan and then our 3-year picture. The second half of the 6 key components starts with the issues component. So the issues component is about creating a culture of visibility of our issues. And it's not a failure to have a lot of issues. It means we've got great visibility of what's going on in the business. So listing those issues and having a conversation about what are the most important, highest impact issues to work through every week. And then we have a process that we call IDS, identify, discuss, solve. And this is a discipline that you can develop through the business, and you can apply to solving almost any issue. Most businesses and most teams will get stuck in discuss. And so by setting a framework of IDS, it reminds us to question what is the issue, and then have a discussion about gathering the facts so that we can set up for a solve. And the solve happens outside of the meeting. We tackle the 3 most important, highest impact issues at a time. That means that if we were working from 1 to 7 here, we may never get to 7. We may run out of time each week. So if we choose the highest impact, most important things first, then the other things are lower importance and can be taken offline. Once we solve the first issue, once we identify the first issue, we frame it and we say, so in this case, Andy S. Is he in the right seat or not? Discuss what we know about it. Let's gather the facts so that we can move to a solve. We work through 3 at a time, taking that same approach, and then we develop that rhythm, and it becomes a second nature. What's the issue? What do we know about it? And what are we doing to solve it? The next component is process. And so process is about having our processes, what we call our core processes. It's the 20% that produces 80% of the results, having them documented. Our core processes, I stress that they're a handful, and we don't want to document everything in our business. We want to still have some creative freedom, but there are certain things that we need to have captured and done the same way every time. If they're done the same way every time, then we can focus on growth and future direction and scale. There's quite often a lot more operations processes. So in a technical business, it could be service delivery. In a manufacturing business, it could be their engineering. So we want to make sure that the 20% that produce the 80% of the results across the business are captured. Then we produce them in a simple, consistent format so that people will actually want to engage with them and want to follow those processes. So one of the common ones we work through is a people process. So that will exist in the business already. And then once we've got that, that becomes your way of doing business. It's uniquely you. The processes should be simple, accessible, and up to date. And the goal then, when we have them documented, is to ensure that they're followed by all. And for them to be followed by all, they definitely need to be simple. They definitely need to be accessible, and they need to be up to date. And then we have a followed by all checklist, which means we need to train people on this process. We need to measure the impact of the performance. And then we need to have a response, leadership and management response, to make sure that we're keeping people on track. And then we need to make sure we're regularly updating them. The best test of a process is a new employee, a new team member joining. And if they can give you some feedback on whether it was useful or insightful or questions relating to the process, that's a great trigger to update. The next component is traction, quite satisfyingly at the bottom of the wheel. And traction first is about rocks. And so I described rocks earlier, but they're the 90-day objectives. And the next is meetings. So once we set those rocks, we have a weekly meeting that keeps us on track. And it's called a level 10 meeting. We exist in this 90-day world where we set those rocks, we agree that they're the most important things to focus on, and then we push on and we just track the progress of those every week. And the level 10 meetings that happen on the same day, same time every week, they start on time and end on time. They follow the same agenda, and the agenda looks a little bit like this. So good news, 5 minutes in total, personal and professional highlight from the last week. The scorecard, how does our scorecard look? If there's any red, we drop it down to our issues list. Rocks, are they on track, off track, or done? If anything is off track or done, we put it to the issues list, especially off track, so that we can bring it back on track. We capture company employee headlines, topical front page news that we need to share, and we review our to-dos from our last meeting. Quite often there are to-dos that come out of meetings, and we need to know if they're done or not done. If they're not done, we drop them down to our issues list. We build an issues list, and then we devote the majority of the meeting, 60 minutes, sometimes more, within that 90-minute maximum, to discuss our issues. And we use that identify, discuss, solve process on all of those issues, choosing 3 at a time. We conclude the meeting quickly, 5 minutes in total. What are our new to-dos? What are our cascading messages? What are we sharing with people that weren't in the meeting? And then we rate the meeting out of 10. And so we're shooting for a 10 out of 10 meeting, but we need to be accountable to that as a team. If it's not a 10 out of 10, we need to understand why. Following that meeting pulse is critical to success. Our rocks are aligned with our 1-year plan. Checking in on those weekly allows us to ensure that they are delivered. And we're shooting for 80% rock completion quarter after quarter, and we should have absolute confidence that if we consistently deliver our rocks, then we will in fact deliver on our 1-year plan. Just a quick overview of the 6 key components again: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction. So we have a process of our own to implement EOS in your business. It looks like this. We started off with a 90-minute meeting, so that could have been a while ago. That's where the company decided that they wanted to actually work with an EOS implementer and implement EOS in their business. We started with a focus day then, once that decision was made. Focus day is where we learned the foundational tools, the accountability chart as described, the concept of rocks and the 90-day world, the meeting pulse and how it all fits together, and the scorecard of what are our most important numbers. Then we went into a vision building, 2 days of vision building where we created that VTO, that vision traction organizer, starting with our core values. We launched into our 90-day world, which is hopefully where you are now. Look forward to seeing you at the next quarterly and give you an idea of what to expect. Every time we come together, we refocus, we work on maintaining traction, we build team health, and then we set our rocks 90 days at a time, practice some things like IDS, and we leave those sessions on the same page. One team, one vision. There are a lot of resources that you can use. You can watch this video back anytime you like. Some of the resources can be found at eosworldwide.com. There's also the Traction Library. I recommend that you get a copy of this. Hopefully I can hand one to you at your first quarterly. And there's lots of downloadable tools and videos on YouTube channels relating to EOS Worldwide. There's a lot of content to take in. So thanks for your attention and your time. I look forward to seeing you at the next session. I'm Dan Williams. If you want to contact me, that's my email address there. I look forward to seeing you. And once again, welcome.